Today's daf we're going to be learning is Moed Katan Yud Tet. Today's daf is sponsored by Carol Robinson and Arthur Gould in loving memory of Carol's mother, Irma Robinson, Huda Bat Moshe Zichrona Levracha. Today is her 7th year at site. Irma moved from New Haven to Chicago to marry Lou and build a rich life there, including lifelong friends, work she loved at a nearby high school library, and active participation in her synagogue. She lived with Alzheimer for 7 years with dignity and strength and never forgot Carol or her sister. She would be very proud of Carol studying Daf Yomi. We're going to start today. We'll review the Mishnah briefly from the bottom of Yudchet Amud Bet. First, we started with Ein Kotvin Shtarei Chov b'Moed. You can't write promissory notes. B'mei no mami no, but there were some certain exceptions. If you didn't trust the guy or if the scribe needed work, then you could. Other things you can't write. Ein Kotvin Sparim Tefillin u'Mezuzot b'Moed. You can't write books, tefillin, or mezuzahs. Ve'ein migihin ot echad afilu b'Sefer Ezra. You can't even edit one word from Sefer Torah, even the one of Ezra. We discussed what that was yesterday. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kotev Adam Tefillin u'Mezuzot la'atzmo, v'toveh al yerechot chelet l'tzitzito. Rabbi Yehuda seems to all of a sudden permit things for the purposes of a mitzvah. If you need tefillin, mezuzah, or tzitzit, so you're allowed to write for yourself the tefillin, the mezuzah, or to spin the thread for the tzitzit. We'll talk about spinning the wool soon, on your lap, okay, or on your leg, okay, basically using your leg to spin the thread. Okay, normally you'd use a spindle or some other type of equipment. We'll get to that soon in the Gemara. Here we're saying this is your classic example of a shinoi, different than your typical manner. It's not a very great method of doing it, right? It doesn't work as well, but we're going to permit that kind of way of doing it if you need for tzitzit. Now, why not a Sefer Torah? So first of all, you could say Tefillin and Mezuzot or something more personal of use. You don't necessarily need a Sefer Torah. Some people distinguish between Torah is for learning. So there's no goal to having a Torah. The goal is to use it for learning. Whereas the Tefillin or Mezuzot, there might be a mitzvah in and of themselves of the writing of it or the tzitzit of the making of it. But the truth is there is a mitzvah for writing a Sefer Torah. So I'm not sure exactly how that distinction goes about, but more that the Torah is a means to use for something else, for learning, whereas the others are a means for the mitzvah in and of itself. Tanu Rabbanit. Now there's a braita that says, Kotev Adam Tefillin u'Mezuzot la'atzmo, v'toveh al yerechot chelet l'tzitzito. Okay, this sounds very much like Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. You can write Tefillin and Mezuzot for yourself and spin the wool on your leg for the tzitzit. But they add one more thing here. For other people, you could do it bitova. That means you can't do it for selling to them, but you can do it as a favor. So you're allowed to do that for other people. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he was the one who appeared in our Mishnah, but this didn't appear in the Mishnah. Ma'arim, he said just you could do it for yourself. So since you could do it for yourself, he adds here in this braita, ma'arim, you can do a little bit of trickery, like a halachic loophole, which is what? Mocher et shelo, you can sell yours. And then, chazer v'kotev la'atzmo. Since you can do it for yourself, but if you have, you don't need. So what do? Sell your own, and then you can write for yourself. So that's a way that if you wanted to write to sell, you could actually do it in that manner. Because in the end, you're left with, I need for myself, so I'm writing for myself. Talked about before this concept of ha'arama, of kind of finding a legal loophole to get out of, if you really need to do something. So here you see how they bend the rules in as long as at that given moment, you need it for a way that's permitted, which is I need it for myself and that's permitted, then it's okay. Nobody says you can't sell what you have. So you sell what you have and then you have a need. Rabbi Yossi Omer, kotev v'mocher kedarko, kedei parnasato. You can write and sell in a normal manner as long as you need it for your parnasa, for your sustenance. Now, what does parnasa mean? Until now, we were talking about, if you remember recently, we've discussed there was one side, which is you need it for food. Ein lo ma yochal. Now, kedei parnasato doesn't use the same language as you don't have any food to put on the table. On the other hand, we had laharvacha, which is to make a profit. So kedei parnasato must be somewhere in between, which is you need it for your livelihood, but it's a little bit extra to keep you going for the next day, for the next week, or to have a few other items, but without moving into the category of luxury, and it's just for profit. So we have this three-way machloket in the Braita, which again is added to the opinions in our Mishnah. We saw in our Mishnah, for example, you can't write in them at all. And yet here they all seem to permit it. The question is just in what way and how. So who do we hold like? Oru le Rav le Rav Chananel, the Amr le Rabba Bar Chana le Rav Chananel, either Rav taught Rav Chananel or Rabba Bar Chana taught Rav Chananel. Halacha kotev u'mochil kedarko kadei parnasato. The halacha is you can do it like Rabbi Yossi in order to make a living, no problem. The lenient opinion. V'tova yirechot chelet, right? You see here, by the way, that when it came to Chol Moed, just like we saw with Avelut, there was this general tendency to be more lenient about things. So now we're going to see a Braita about this. Tanu Rabbanit, and again, different opinions. But you can't use a stone. By the way, I recommend Googling videos on how to spin thread manually, and you'll see different ways, like how to make a spindle, a portable one, a very easy one. What you'll learn is by doing that is that the idea is to basically take the wool, right, which is very I don't even know the word, but it's right. It's wool. It's all over the place kind of thing. And you want to turn it into this one strand. So you have to twist it, do all sorts of things. So now a spindle twists around and it's a very easy way to do it. It spins. So that's why we call it spinning thread. But you can also attach a stone, which is heavy and pulls down, and use that to kind of pull it down and do it. And you can also even do it, like we saw on your lap, you can do it by hand really. Okay. So what we're going to see is different opinions about it. So according to the first opinion, you could do it on your leg, but not be'evan, okay, not with a stone. That's going to be a problem. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Chachamim omrim af be'evan. The rabbis say even with an evan, okay, even with a stone. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishmo, he said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, be'evan avalo be'pelech. You can do it with a stone, but you can't do it with a spindle. So the question is, right, again, do we say on your, by hand, yes, but not with a stone? Do we say even your hand in a stone, but not a pelech, right? So, and the rabbi said even be'evan, they didn't really specify whether they meant with a spindle as well. The chachamim, so that's the way they're going to say now. And chachamim omrim bein be'evan bein be'pelech. The rabbis seem to really allow any kind of way of doing it. They have no problem with spinning thread as long as it's for the tzitzit. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So let's see how we hold. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Halacha bein be'evan bein be'pelech. Halacha kotev kederko mocher kedei parnasato. He's lenient on both issues, the one we mentioned earlier before, and now this issue. Both we're going to be lenient on. Okay, again, leniency. New Mishnah. Now we're going to get to when the regel conflicts with avelut, and at what point do we cancel avelut? Do we cancel shloshim? How does it work? So a lot of these issues we talked about before, now we're going to see them again. If you bury a dead person 3 days before the regel, which means you already had 3 days of Shiva, we talked about before that possibly only the first day of Shiva is on a Torah level. If you say Shiva's Torah, right? And there's this distinction between day number 1 and the rest of the days. There's also a distinction between the first 3 days and the rest of the 7. Okay, there's kind of levels within. So if you've already done 3 days, then Shiva is canceled by the holiday. Now you might be thinking, what do you mean? Even an hour, Shivas get canceled by the holiday. We're going to see that opinion on Daf Kaf. That is not the opinion of the Tana of our Mishnah. Then, so again, Shlosha Yamim Kodem L'Regel, B'Teila Yimenu Gzerat Shiva. So Shiva gets canceled. Shmona, if there's 8 days before, so then you finish your Shiva and you have another day. But Telu Yimenu Gzerat Shloshim, comes the holiday and cancels the Shloshim. Mipnei Shamru, Shabbat Ola Ve'ena Mafseket. They say that Shabbat counts as one of your 7 days, and it doesn't cancel out Shiva like the holiday does. Regalim Mafsikim Ve'enan Olim. The holidays stop the Shiva, and they don't count as days of Shiva, right? They're not part of any count. So now, why is there a different Shabbat and Regel? So a few different answers are given. I'll mention 2 of them. One is that Shabbat is a din of simcha. This is the one we usually hear. It's a din of simcha. And because it's simcha, you can't have avelut, conflict with simcha. Shabbat, there is oneg Shabbat, but it's not the same as simcha. Simcha is real happiness, and that you can't experience with avelut. Okay, and they're real conflicts. That's one option. Another option is to say, well, realistically, this doesn't work, because if Shabbat would cancel out Shiva, we'd almost never have 7 days of Shiva. every week you have Shabbat. So it makes no sense to say that Shabbos cancels Shiva. So that's another possibility. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Mishacharav Beit HaMikdash atzeret kishabbat. He says, once the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, Shavuot is like Shabbat. It doesn't cancel out. Why? Because Shavuot is only one day. What does it matter? Time of the temple, not time of the temple. Because when the temple, in other words, what they say is basically one day can't come and cancel a whole week of Shiva. A holiday that's 7 days could. So they say in the times of the temple, if you remember, we've talked about this before, if you've been learning the daf for a while, which is there's a law of what we call tashlumin, which is if you didn't do the sacrifice that you're supposed to bring on Shavuot, the Chagiga sacrifices, prelude to Masechet Chagiga, which is our next Masechet, then you can do it, you can make it up for the next 6 days. So that turns Shavuot in the time of the temple into a 7-day holiday. Because anyone who didn't bring it the first day would bring holiday sacrifices all those 7 days. So it had more of a holiday status for longer than 1 day. Whereas once the temple's destroyed and there is no such concept, like the only thing we have left of this is we actually don't say Tachanun all those days. Tachanun prayer is not said on happy occasions, on holidays. So it's not said on all those days, but that's a very small remnant of this halacha. We don't really treat it as a holiday, in which case it doesn't cancel Shiva, according to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabban Gamliel Omer, we can see all different opinions about what holidays do, what holidays don't. Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim kirigalim. He goes the opposite way, which is say Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, which are also 1 day. Remember, Rosh Hashanah ends up 2 days, but theoretically, it's really only 1 day. Are like the holidays, and they actually cancel the holiday, the Shiva. They cancel mourning as well because they're happy days. The Chachamim omrim lo k'divrei zeh v'lo k'divrei zeh. We don't hold like Rabban Gamliel. We don't hold like Rabbi Eliezer, which you were probably thinking. You know that. Ela atzeret kirigalim, Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippur v'Yom Kippurim kishabbat. Okay, the Yamim Noraim are called Yamim Noraim. They're not exactly also happy Simcha-oriented days. They are, but they also have a very certain amount of seriousness about them. Those don't cancel out the Shiva. But Atzeret is a holiday. It's one of the 3 regalim. It's true, it's only 1 day, but it's a day of Simcha, and it cancels out Shiva. Now we're going to start with the Gemara. Amarav, Gzerat batlu, Yamim lo batlu. When we say that if you started at 8, you did 8 days already, and then comes the holiday, it cancels out Shloshim. So it cancels Shloshim, but Yamim lo batlu. It doesn't cancel out the days. The count of 30 days, we're going to talk about this soon, what this means. V'chein amar Rav Huna, Gzerat batlu, Yamim lo batlu. He says the exact same thing as Rav, but here comes Rav Shesha with a dissenting opinion. Rav Shesha amar afilu Yamim nami batlu. Even days get canceled. Meaning, right, Shloshim is over entirely. Now we're going to go back to Rav and Rav Huna. My time a Yamim lo batlu. Why do they say days aren't canceled? What does that mean? Here, it's not exactly a typical my time, which is what's the reason. It's more like, what do you mean by that? She'im lo gilech erev haregel, asur legalech achal haregel. If you don't shave before the regel, then you can't shave after the regel till the 30 days are over. Why is this? It actually makes perfect logical sense. Because the whole reason you're allowed to shave before is because we don't want you to go into the holiday disheveled. But if you don't shave and you go into the holiday disheveled, then we're not going to give you any extra dispensation after and say, oh, now you can shave. Right? It's almost like a slap in the face to the holiday. So it doesn't. So that's why they say you can't do it. Your Shloshim days are still there. If you didn't cut your hair or shave before, then you can't do it after until actually the 30 days pass. Now we're going to bring up a Hatanya. A Hatanya usually means, and behold in a Braita it says, which is either usually brought as a proof or a question. More times than not, it's actually a question. Here, it's going to be used a little differently. It's actually going to be a support, although I will tell you that some people disagree with this because it really should have used a different term if what I'm saying is true. And it's not just me saying it. Rashi says it, siyata. It's coming as a proof, meaning as a support for what we just said, which is that there's these 2 dissenting opinions about whether the Shloshim is canceled entirely or the days still remain, especially if you didn't shave before, then you're not going to be able to shave after, or particularly if you didn't. So here comes the Braita. HaKover et meito 3 yamim kodem laregel, b'tela imenu gzerat shiv'a. If you bury someone 3 days before the holiday, then you have no shiva. 8 yamim kodem laregel, b'tela imenu gzerat shloshim. 8 days before, you're not going to have any shloshim. Umigalech erev haregel. And then you shave on erev haregel. Im lo gilech erev haregel, Asur l'galech achar regel. But if you didn't shave on the erev haregel, then you're not allowed to shave after. That's Rav and Rav Huna. Abba Shaul Omer, and this is going to match Rav Sheshet, mutar l'galech achar haregel. You're allowed to. Kashem shemitzvah shlosha mevatel gzerat shiv'ah. Just like 3 days of Shiva will cancel out all of Shiva if the holiday comes. Kach mitzvah shiva mevatel gzerat shloshim. It's a comparison. Just like it does it there, it does it here as well. Right? That the Shiva will cancel out shloshim, and therefore there is no shloshim after. And that's Rav Sheshet. Now the Gemara asks, 1 minute. He says Shiv'ah is mevatelet Shiv'ah shloshim. Now, didn't we say in the Mishnah Shmona you have to have 8 days before for it to cancel it? And this machloket we actually saw previously, the famous machloket Abba Shaul and the rabbis. V'ha'anan shmonatnan. Doesn't it say in the Mishnah 8 days in order to cancel shloshim? Kasavar Abba Shaul miktzad hayom kikulo. Oh no, it's because Abba Shaul holds that a little bit of the day is counted as if the whole day was done. Which means Yom Shvi'i Ole Lekanu Lekan. Right? He says the 7th day in your morning, Shiva is over in the morning. That means your Shloshim already kicks in the morning. So therefore, you only need 7 days. But the Mishnah was going according to the rabbis who require 8 days because they say you don't say Miktzad Yom Kikulo. The whole 7th day is Shiva. Therefore, only the 8th day is Shloshim. So if the holiday was on day 8, then it actually doesn't cancel because you had to have had some Shloshim before the holiday starts. Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Ravina Bar Shila. Halacha ke'Abba Shaul. Okay, the halacha is like Abba Shaul. We're now going to see a whole slew of opinions about who we hold like and in what situation. And in what way would the rabbis agree, in which case would they concede to Abba Shaul? Halacha ke'Abba Shaul. So according to Rav Chisda in the name of Ravina Bar Shila, we hold like Abba Shaul. Miktzad hayom kekulo. Part of the day is considered as if it's been a whole day. Umodim chachamim l'Abba Shaul. They will agree with him in what case? We had learned this before. If the 8th day falls out on Shabbat, which is Erev HaRegel, that's the day right before the Yantif, they hold that in that case you can actually shave on the 7th day because you really should be able to shave on the 8th day because the Shloshim does start on Shabbat. Because remember, Shabbos counts as a day. So that does count as the first day of Shloshim. So the regel is canceled. The problem is that would allow you to shave, but it would allow you to shave on Shabbat. On Shabbat, you can't shave, so we allow you to shave before Shabbat. Now, who, according to, does this go? What Rav Amram says in the name of Rav. Avel, on the last day, once everyone who came to mourn with him, to console him, left, or her left, mutar b'rechitza. The mourner is allowed to wash their bodies. In other words, the Shiva ends when the people leave, and then, right, even though the 7th day isn't over yet. So obviously, Kiman, right, who is this like? Abba Shaul, right? Like Abba Shaul, who said, Miktzat hayom kekulo. Amar Abaye, halacha ka'Abba Shaul b'yom shiv'ah. He says, on the 7th day, we hold like Abba Shaul, meaning the 7th day, Miktzat hayom kekulo, your Shiva ends in the morning. Umodim chachamim la'Abba Shaul b'yom shloshim. The rabbis actually, we hold like Abba Shaul against the rabbis about day number 7. The rabbis think day number 7, the whole day is Shiva. But the rabbis agree with Abba Shaul b'yom shloshim. They agree with him when it comes to shloshim, damrina miktzad hayom kekulo, that we do hold part of the day cancels it out. On the 30th day, you can actually shave once the morning passes, or once a small part of the morning passes, you can already shave. Rava Amar, so that's a different approach, that the rabbis agree about the shloshim. Until now, we thought the rabbis don't agree with him. We just hold like Abba Shaul. Rava Amar, alacha ka'Abba Shaul b'yom shloshim, ve'en alacha ka'Abba Shaul b'yom shiv'ah. We hold like the rabbis when it comes to Shiva. You need an entire 7th day, right? We don't do this, but that's how Rava held. And when it comes to Shloshim, they still disagree, but we hold like Abba Shaul. We're lenient when it comes to Shloshim, we're stringent when it comes to Shiva. In Nahardea, they said we're going to pass like him in both directions. Why is that? Shmuel, because Shmuel said, we saw this before, that Shmuel is always lenient when it comes to Avelut. So therefore, we're going to be lenient, and in all the directions, we're going to hold like Abba Shaul to be lenient. Shloshim Yomi Nalan. Where did we get this idea of Shloshim? How do we know it's 30 days? Where did we come up with this idea that you can't cut your hair or shave for 30 days? Some people also know laundry. Yalif pera mi nazir. It's a gzera shavar from the word pera that appears by a nazir and the word pera that appears by Avel, Ktiv Hacha, Rashechem al Tifrau, that's by Aaron and his sons. Don't let your hair grow long, which again, we learned from there that a regular Avel needs to grow their hair long. Uchtiv Hatam Gadel Peras Al Rosho, a Nazir is supposed to grow his hair long, right? Can't cut his hair. So Mala Aman Shloshim, Avkan Shloshim, just like a Nazir. A standard Nazirut is 30 days. That means if you didn't specify how long you want to be a Nazir for, you're a Nazir for 30 days. So likewise here, it's 30 days. How do we know there it's 30 days? Right? There are commentaries, by the way, who try to come up with more connections between a Nazir and a mourner. V'hataminalam, from where do we get it from? The mourner is 30, that a Nazir is 30 days. Amarav matna stam nazirut shloshim yom. An average Nazirut is 30 days. Where does he get it from? That didn't help us yet. My taima. What's the reason? Amar krat kadoshi hiyeh. It says by the Nazir, he will be sanctified. And yihiyeh b'gematria is tlatin. The word yihiyeh is 10, 10, 5, and 5. That's 30, and that's how we get it. Talton hafu. Amar Rav Huna b'rei de Rav Yoshua. Hakol modim k'shachal shlishi shelo liot erev haregel she'asur b'rechitzat ha'erev. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, says, everyone agrees that when the 30th day falls out on the erev haregel, the third day, my mistake, the third day is Erev HaRegel. Remember, the Regel comes in and cancels Shiva. Even though we said Miktzad Yom Kikulo, in this case, we don't hold Miktzad Yom Kikulo because you didn't finish your Shiva yet. So you have to wait till the very end of the day, and you can only wash at the end of that day. Okay? All laws of Avelut apply until just before the sun sets. Amar Rav Nechemia b'rei de Rav Yoshua, Eshkachtinu l'Rav Papa l'Rav Papa tiyatre v'ka'amre halacha k'Rav Huna b'rei de Rav Yoshua. Rav Nechemia, the son of Rav Yoshua, says, I was with Rav Papa, and they said the halacha is like this law of Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, that you have to wait till nighttime, or till almost before nighttime to wash. Igad Amre, some people say, and this is just the difference of who said it, there was Rav Nechemia b'rei de Rav Yosef, not Rav Nechemia b'rei de Rav Yoshua, who said, Ashkachtinu l'Rav Papa, same thing, I saw them. And they add a third person here, Rav Huna b'rei de Rav Yoshua, and then it's that they were with Rav Huna. Not that they said we hold like Rav Huna, they were with Rav Huna, b'rei de Rav Yoshua. And they all said, so the conclusion is the same. It's just a matter of, did they paskin like Rav Huna, b'rei de Rav Yoshua, or is it with all three of them were sitting together and they all three said this halacha? Abaye mirabba. Abaye asked Rabbah the following question. This is the very end of our daf. Abaye asked Rabbah, who was his adoptive father, he says, I want to know, Kavru beregel, if they buried someone on the regel, regel olelo leminyan shloshim, or ein regel olelo leminyan shloshim. When we have a regel, now this, by the way, I forgot to mention this in the Mishnah. We said that Shabbat counts as a day of the Avelut, but a holiday doesn't count as a day of Avelut. Now, we said that the holiday cancels Shiva, so of course it doesn't count as a day of Avelut. But we said it meant also it doesn't count as a days of Shloshim, right? And then, but also more importantly, what if someone's buried on the regel? So you count, right? The days of the regel don't count as days of Shiva, right? If someone was died the third day of the regel, we don't say, oh, you already had a few days of Shiva. You only finish up at the end. Here's another relevance of it, okay? Which is, if someone was buried on the holiday, if someone was buried before the holiday, we're going to see it's relevant. Because in the Mishnah, it said the first 3 days. It didn't say what happens if the person died 1 or 2 days before the regel. So the assumption is that when the Mishnah says the regel doesn't count, that means if you had 2 days before, then you're going to have to, the regel doesn't count as days of Shiva like Shabbat would, and you have to start counting another 5 days after. And now we're going to see inside here explicitly. So now here comes his question. Kavru b'regel, regel olelo l'minyan shloshim, or en regel olelo l'minyan shloshim. If you bury someone on the holiday, now we don't count those as days of Shiva, but maybe they count as Shloshim days. And he's going to say like this, L'minyan Shiva lo k'mebayle. I'm not asking about Shiva days. I know that for sure they don't count as Shiva days. D'lo nage mitzvat Shiva b'regel, because there is no Shiva on the regel. But ki k'mebayle l'minyan Shloshim. Now what can't you do on Shloshim? You can't cut your hair and you can't shave. Now on the regel, you can't do that either. So do you say, since the mitzvah of Shloshim apply in the regel, what's the halacha? Maybe they do count as days of Shloshim, because in the end, you just need 30 days that you don't cut your hair, and that starts maybe from even in the middle of the holiday. Amar le, eino ole. He says, no. Those days don't count. Your Shiva starts after, and your Shloshim starts counting from your Shiva. So, actually, sorry, I don't know why I said that. Sorry, we're going to see this other in the question. This is where it comes up with the 2 days and the 5 days. Okay, 80 days. So now Abai is going to ask a question from the following Tanaitic source. We're not going to get to his question yet. It's a long source. We're going to continue with it tomorrow, but we'll start with the first part of the Braita. This is the case I mentioned before. If you bury your dead 2 days before the holiday, and then according to what we've learned so far, Shiva won't cancel that, even though that's not what we practice today. You count 5 days after the regel. Okay, basically the regel it's like pushing a pause button and then pushing play again when the holiday ends. So now, in those days after the holiday, you're in Shiva, so your work is done by others, you can't work. Your servants, your maidservants can do work in your house as long as they do it without people noticing. This is interesting. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. People don't come and pay Shiva calls according to this, because they actually paid Shiva calls during the regel. Now, again, we don't have this kind of reality anymore, but in those days, it seemed that people would still come visit. It's just that your laws of Shiva, of not, whatever kind of laws of Shiva that applied during that week would be basically suspended during the holiday, but people did still come visit them. Okay, we'll talk about this more tomorrow. With this, we'll finish our daf, and we will pick up from here and explain what Abai's question on Rabba is. Again, Rabba said to him that if you buried in the regel, your shloshim is going to only count starting after the regel. The clock doesn't start ticking from when the person died. Have a great day, everybody. We'll meet up tomorrow, and already I'll wish you an early Chodesh Tov.